Morning, this is Jason, Colorado Mountain Man Survival. Today I'm going to show you how to make the Paiute Deadfall. With the Paiute, we just need 3 basic components, plus the Deadfall, which is usually a pretty good sized rock. So I'm going to just start out with these 2 sticks. This is a toggle stick, this will come into play later. But for these sticks, you're going to need 2 fairly good size, well, not really too big, but stout enough to hold the weight of the rock. The length on this is a 10, the hang 10, like the surfer dude, plus 2 or 4 fingers. The big round, the width of that, you can see it's not too big, but it's going to be enough to hold that weight. And typically, depending on the rock size, you can see this particular one is about my thumb size. But what I got to do is this first one, this is my upright. It's going to sit on the ground right like this. We need a flat bottom. And then on the top, we're going to do about a 45-degree angle so this stick can rest on top of it without slipping off. And then on this one here, we're also going to do a 45 at this angle. That's where our deadfall, our rock, sits on top of it. And then last, we do need paracord for this. If you don't have paracord, you're going to need to learn how to make primitive cordage using the plant life. But I'm going to go ahead and get started cutting on these, and I'll show you what we do along the way. Alright, I went ahead and made these cuts with a saw. This is oak, so the saw works pretty quick through this. If you don't have a saw, obviously, you just use your bushcraft knife. Make these cuts, and if I need to clean things up, I'll clean it up with my knife here. You really kind of want these cuts for the trap to work a little bit better, to be for you to set it easier. The cleaner these cuts are, the better. But basically, this is going to sit on top of here just like that. So next I need to do, I need to make a notch right here on this stick. Call it a number 7 notch. That way these two bite together really well. So I'm going to use my saw, I'm going to make another cut here, and then I'm going to use my knife and whittle that out. Okay, for this cut that I make, this notch, I go probably about 1/3 of the way to 1/4 of the way down the stick to make that notch. If I've already cut this side, then I need to make sure that I put it on the back side of this edge right here. So line these up. I'm going to guess, right about here, maybe a little bit further up. I want to make that cut. So I'm going to come in at a kind of at an angle here. It just bites better if you angle this inwards. So I'm going to angle in, and just a little ways through, I'm going to make a saw cut. Again, if you don't have a saw, you're going to use your knife, but we're just trying to speed things up here. And then I just use my knife and push away and carve out a nice notch for that upright to sit in. And it's got to be wide enough here, the width here has got to be wide enough for that, again, for the upright to sit in nicely. You don't want it too narrow, otherwise it's not going to fit in there properly. Make sure these cuts here are clean in here. You don't want a bunch of junk in there, all that little remnants of my carve. If you leave that in there, then sometimes it'll bind up and you won't be able to get a good action, I suppose, on the trap, or it just won't fit properly. Okay, so here's my cut. You can see the notch. It kind of looks like a number 7. That just fits nicely on top of there. Should sit there freely without it falling off the back. Next thing that we're going to need to do is tie in a toggle. So I'm going to attach the paracord back here. I'm going to cut a notch clear around here so that paracord will bite in really easy. So I'm just going to use my saw real quick to cut that notch, and then I'm going to take and put paracord around it, and then that paracord will run from here, from this point down to here, and that's where we'll tie in the toggle. So I'm going to make that real quick and then show you next step. Okay, so here I made my notch. I used the saw and then cleaned it up with my knife, and then I'm going to tie this paracord in. What I'm going to do to tie it in is I'm going to do a jam knot. For a jam knot, we just make an overhand knot at the end of the rope, pull it tight, and then we're going to do another overhand knot right next to it, and then leave it loose just like that. So here's my first knot, here's the overhand knot. Then I'm going to take the working end of the rope, or the other end of the rope, and I'm going to pass it through that hole. I'm going to pull it through. Now I've made another loop right here. I'm going to take that loop and I'm going to put it over this notch that I cut out, and I'm just going to work it back and forth until it tightens down. It jams up, the two knots jam together there, and that's tight. That's not going to go anywhere. As you can see, I'm pulling on this pretty hard. It's not going to slip off of there. Alright, so now we've got our Paiute. I'm going to work this around a little bit. Okay, we got the start of our Paiute here. This cord runs from back here, like I said before, and wraps around here. Now, when you're setting your trap, a lot of times you'll have a problem with this rope running up, sliding up this axis. So what I do is I cut another notch here in the bottom of this stick that holds this in place. Now you want that notch pretty wide because you don't want this rope to get jammed in there. It needs to pop freely out. So my next step to make this trap a little bit better is to cut this notch right here. So that's what I'm going to do next. So I've put in this notch, paracord wraps around here. Next step, flip this around here so you can see, goes out to this side. Next step is I got a toggle. I just found a little piece of wood. This is maybe 2 inches long. It's going to sit on the back side of this just like this. So I have to take this paracord and tie it around that toggle so that it holds it in place right here. So let me show you how to tie that real quick. I just do a couple overhand knots on this. So I'm, guessing that this has got to sit right about here. So I'm going to take this and just take this paracord. Try to keep it in that location and tie it. Pull it tight. I'll do another one. Use whatever knot you like here. These are just a simple overhand knot. And there's always the term, if you don't know a knot, tie a lot. Well, that works, I suppose, for this type of situation. Alright, so again, we got this sitting here like this. This wraps around. The rope goes through there. And the toggle is held in place. Now you see, just by the pressure that we're sitting on here, I can hold this up. If I'm putting pressure down on the top, I release this toggle and this will flip off. My hand got it jammed up, but this will flip off. So again, the deadfall sits right here and this flips around and holds it up. Last piece of this is the bait stick or the trigger stick, and that's going to run from the toggle off to my rock. All this bit of paracord is extra and not necessary, so I'm going to cut it off right here. Okay, so here's my Paiute that I carved. The last piece of this, like I said, is the bait stick. Typically you just want a narrow bait stick that you can easily break with your thumb so you can gauge the distance to the rock. You're going to need a big, heavy, flat rock. You want it flat this side that's going to slam into the ground so the animal that comes in here won't be able to escape through little or larger gaps. This one should be plenty big enough, plenty flat enough. And then this bait stick is going to jam up on the back side of the rock somewhere in here as it's sitting like this. And if that bait stick is too long, now I can easily snap it with my thumb. Alright, so the easiest way for me to set this trap, and you're going to want to learn to do this all by yourself, so I usually stick my forearm on the rock here, get my Paiute in place, set it up like that, and then just take this and sit it underneath the rock. Let the weight of the rock rest on this flat edge, and then hold it in place, this back side. Make sure you keep your hand out of the way in case it does do something like that. But we're going to get it wedged in there. You see how the rock sits on here. You want this on the outside edge of this rock. You don't want this support up underneath there. Otherwise, when it triggers, it's just going to jam up on it. All right. So now I take this toggle. You really have to be careful here. You take this toggle and you're going to hold it back. Now I can let up off the weight on the back side of this. Hold this toggle back here with this hand and make sure everything's out in my hand and everything's out of the way. And if I can sit here and hold this toggle just like that and this rock not come crashing down, then the balances on that is pretty well. They're pretty good. All right, so now I got my bait stick. I got to measure the length from the back side of the rock somewhere. Typically you want to find a little groove on the back of the rock that this bait stick will sit into. If you're having a hard time back here, then move the stick up the rock a little ways. It's fine, the animal can just reach up in there and grab that. But right here, where my thumb is, you can see that's the length of where I want that rock, or that stick to be. So I'm gonna just put my thumb there and I'm gonna press it against the ground and try to break it in that area. Now it's the length I want about. Now I can just sit here and wedge that bait stick against that rock, and that should spring free. All right, so typically deadfalls are a directional trap. This is not a directional trap, other than the animal can come in from either side. But all that animal has to do is touch that stick, and it should fall down. If you wanted to trap the animal in there a little bit more, you could take and put some grass around these sides, and it'll make that animal slow down a little bit if he triggers it and is quick and can get out. If there's like a little bit of a fence here, it'll block him and makes it a little less chance of escaping. But this is a pretty good trap as is. So we're going to trigger it here in a second and show you how little weight it takes to trigger this guy. Okay, so I've got this set with the bait stick in place. You know, the toggle's a little bit off the ground. And here's my animal. Animal comes in and goes for the bait, and we got him.